the first ever choreographer in residence for the Smithsonian, based at the National Portrait Gallery, and direct Dana Tysoon Burgess Dance Company, now in its 28th season. May is nationally recognized as AAPI Heritage Month. Each year, the Mayor's Office on Asian Pacific Islander Affairs, MOAPIA, organizes the Mayor's AAPI Heritage Month celebration to honor the rich history, culture, and contributions of our district's Asian and Pacific Islanders. Our AAPI community is unique in the sense that we are a community comprised of more than 30 distinct groups, each with its own language, culture, customs. And tonight's celebration will highlight that. Not only does our diversity make us unique, how we embrace such diversity is what makes a district so special.
And before we begin, I would like to go over some housekeeping arrangements that relates to the Q&A session. When you look at your video screen, you will see several circular icons in the bottom section. Click on the blue circle icon to ask a question. In the bottom right section of the screen, type your question in the Q&A box and click send. Questions are welcome throughout our event, and we'll go over them during the Q&A session at the end of our presentations. Now, it is with great pride and joy that I introduce you Director Ben de Guzman of the Mayor's Office on Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs. As Director of the Mayor's Office on Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs, or MOAPIA, Ben is a steadfast voice representing our AAPI community to the Mayor's Office and ensuring that all parts of the AAPI community have a say at the decision-making table. He has been a leading voice at the local and national level on issues of racial equity, immigrant rights, veterans affairs, and LGBT justice for 20 years. As an advocate for equity and recognition for Filipino veterans of the Second World War, he led successful legislative campaigns that secured financial support for these veterans and the Filipino veterans of the Second World War Congressional Gold Medal. As principal staff at the National Queer Asian Pacific Islander Alliance, he spearheaded efforts to promote national LGBTQ campaign on comprehensive immigration reform and a national LGBTQ Pride Month campaign from AAPI advocacy organizations. Ladies and gentlemen, Director Ben de Guzman.
Great, sorry, I was on mute. Good evening, thank you everybody, and happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I have the honor of introducing our special guest for tonight. Mayor Muriel Bowser is the first woman to be elected for a second term as mayor here in Washington, D.C., and is now serving all of us in an unprecedented moment of uncertainty. She's risen to this challenge and is addressing the public health and economic challenges our city is facing in this pandemic with a steady hand and clear and consistent leadership. The comments we get from our residents, the observations I hear from friends and colleagues outside the district about the role she's played in navigating us through these fraught times has only made me more proud to be a resident of the District of Columbia. More proud than I've ever been since moving here more than 20 years ago. I'm proud to live here in Ward 1, and I'm proud to serve in her cabinet. And tonight, I'm proud to introduce her to you all. I give you Mayor Muriel Bowser.
Well, good evening, everybody, and I am so glad that we have an opportunity to celebrate together Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. I'm sorry that we can't do it in person. We have all become accustomed to a month long of activities, certainly filled with cultural celebrations, but also a reminder of what we have to do in our city to uphold our values. I too want to thank Ben and his team at MOAPIA for speaking up and making sure that the voices of the Asian and Pacific Islander community are held within our cabinet. Our office, we know, is a model across the country of making sure that all constituencies in DC are represented in decision making, in budget discussions, and policy formation, and also in how we respond to world events. And one such world event has visited us in fighting COVID-19, and we are especially aware of the type of hate talk and actions coming from the highest levels of office in our country, and certainly infiltrating many aspects of American life. So I want to say very clearly that we stand with the Asian American community in speaking out against that type of hate, and rejecting some of this partisan and sometimes very political and nasty talk around how we fight COVID-19. We see COVID-19 as a very serious threat to the health of Washingtonians. We have a special responsibility here that we have a lot of vulnerable residents who need all of our attention and resources so that they can be isolated and protected from this virus, and we're working very hard to do that. There's also an economic crisis associated with COVID-19 that's affecting people from all walks of life, business owners, and many people who are out of work. But with all of that, I have to tell you, I remain optimistic. We went into this pandemic in a very strong place in Washington, D.C., investing in the things that matter to us, how we grow our city in an equitable way, how we invest in our corridors and in our people. And we're going to come out on the other side of this pandemic able to do all of those things. I recently introduced my budget to the Council of the District of Columbia, where while we weren't able to do everything we wanted to do, we're continuing to invest in services, our DC government team, in education, housing, all of the things that are so important to us in the district. So I do have the opportunity now to present a proclamation in celebration of Asian American Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and I'm going to do that now. So whereas in the District of Columbia, we are proud to celebrate the cultural traditions, ancestry, native languages, and unique experiences represented among the more than 30 ethnic groups from Asia and the Pacific Islands. Washington, D.C. is home to 35,000 Asian American and Pacific Islander residents who remind us that while we all have distinct backgrounds and origins, we are bound in common purpose by the shared hopes and dreams for ourselves and our city. And whereas we celebrate the contributions of Asian and Pacific Islanders this month, we must not forget or allow unnecessary suffering inflicted by discrimination and harassment based on misinformation. For these reasons, and despite the challenges we face right now, I stand with all Washingtonians to lift our Asian American and Pacific Islander residents as they continue enriching our great culture. Therefore, I, Mayor of the District of Columbia, do hereby proclaim this month, May 2020, in Washington, D.C., Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month.
Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you.
Happy API Heritage Month.
Yay.
So we hope we can stay with us as long as you can. We have an exciting lineup tonight. And we're gathered here to recognize Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Since the 1970s, actually, the government and the community have put together to recognize the role that Asian Americans, South Asians, Southeast Asians, and Pacific Islanders have played in all facets of American public life. As the director of the largest government agency in the country serving this constituency, I'm particularly proud to recognize Heritage Month with all of you here tonight. In keeping with tonight's theme of building resilience together, tonight we're going to hear stories of community groups and business owners stepping up to serve. There's so many stories we will not get to tell tonight, and we look forward to working with folks to tell these stories in other platforms and to make sure we continue to connect passion to purpose. Contact us if you want to do your part to serve as well. We've been so excited to connect people who've wanted to give their time, talent, and treasure to play their role in addressing the pandemic. And so we're happy to continue to do so. Community organizations and the businesses like the ones you'll hear tonight form the foundation of our community here in the district, and we couldn't be more proud of them. As we're encouraging folks to get involved in their communities, we hope that you'll get involved in our democracy as well. We'll be talking about the census tonight, and we've been talking about the census for just about a year now, and we're proud of the role that we've been able to play in city government, not just for the AAPI community, but for all of our residents with the Census Outreach Grant Program. But we know that there are elections this year, perhaps the most important elections in our lives. The district has a robust early voting program that's happening as we speak, and we're encouraging folks to submit your ballots if you're eligible to do so via contactless mail. Team MOAPIA is going to be out and about at the 20 voting centers on June 2nd with our colleagues to help make sure our voting process is clean and safe for everyone. Voting is the promise of democracy made whole, and so we hope that you'll all take part. You know, we've talked about the anti-Asian violence that's happening in our communities. We've been documenting the unfortunate incidents that have been happening here in the district. And unfortunately, working on these kinds of acts and this bigotry has been part of my professional career for far too long. From working on the onslaught of violence against Sikh Americans and South Asians after 9/11, almost 2 decades ago, to the harassment my staff have faced multiple times in this pandemic, even as we call for an end to violence, we can't let that call just end at our own self-interest. We can and must rise for justice for everyone, not just our own people, however we're defining that. The statement that Mayor Bowser has made tonight and the statements she's made throughout condemning this violence is a clear example of this and how it's consistent with our DC values. As Dr. Martin Luther King has said, a threat to justice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And every unwarranted act of violence against African Americans, Latinos, or any other group diminishes us all, and it's important that we make this clear at every opportunity. Finally, I just wanted to reiterate how proud I am of our office. A few weeks ago, we held what was the first online discussion in the district about, in this public health emergency mode, about mental health for district residents. We recognize API Heritage Month now with you tonight, and we're mindful that the tone we set here will serve as a precedent as the district moves into June and things like Immigrant Heritage Month and LGBTQ Pride Month. So while we take the opportunity tonight to center the API community and to claim our space when we're normally rendered invisible and marginalized, we do so proud of the leadership role we've been given to play with our colleagues and our community members here in the district. So thank you for your time, for joining us, and again, happy API Heritage Month. And I believe that our next segment is going to be our video. This is a video that we've created. We're proud to show it to you tonight. It's our first really public viewing of this video, and it's really about the role that we as APIs play here in the district. James, let's play the video. James, I'm not sure if we can hear it.
Hear about our land. Hello? Stop it. All right, stopping right now.
I think we're having technical difficulties with the video. I apologize. Elena, maybe we should just continue with the program and we'll see what we can sort out in terms of the video.
Sure. Dana, would you like to continue? Mm-hmm. You have to unmute yourself.
Thank you, Director de Guzman, for your wonderful speech and video. To those families that made the decision to leave your family surroundings, to come to this new country and call the District of Columbia your new home, thank you for enriching our city and diversity. Next up, I would like to introduce everyone to our next speaker, Executive Director Heran Sereke-Brhan. Acting Executive Director Heran Sereke-Brhan has been Senior Grants Officer for CAH since July 2017. Prior to joining CAH, she served as Deputy Director for the Mayor's Office on African Affairs. Over the past 2 decades, Sereke-Brhan has worked at a number of cultural and educational institutions, including the Heran Museum at the University of Florida, Addis Ababa University, and the Smithsonian's National Museum of African Art. She holds a PhD in history with a minor in African art history from Michigan State University. Executive Director Sereke-Brhan, welcome.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Good evening, Mayor Bowser and Director de Guzman and everyone on this virtual panel. Happy Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month to everyone. My name is Heran Sereke-Brhan. I'm Acting Director of the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, the official arts agency for the District of Columbia. I was proud to serve as part of the Mayor's Community Affairs Office at MOAPIA's sister agency at the Office on African Affairs. So many thanks for including me in this evening's celebration. I feel like it's a homecoming of sorts, an extension of the family, and it's really an honor to be with you all today. I actually also recognize a couple of our grantees, our arts grantees, both on the panel and in the video, so it's even more of a family affair here. For many years now, the Commission has been proud to partner with MOAPIA to produce the Mayor's annual AAPI Heritage Month, AAPI Heritage Month celebration event at the historic Lincoln Theater in recognition of the indelible artistic and cultural contributions that our AAPI community has made on the district. And while we're not able to be together in our beloved Lincoln Theater tonight, we still have cause to celebrate a great artistic accomplishment. Beginning in June, the DC Commission on the Arts and Humanities, in partnership with the DC Department of General Services and the DC Department of Transportation and architect Alfred Liu, will begin conservation work on one of the district's most iconic public artworks, the Friendship Archway at 7th and H Streets and DC's historic Chinatown neighborhood. The archway was first dedicated in 1986, commemorating the district's newly formed sister city relationship with Beijing, and was designed by local architect Alfred Liu of AEPA Architects and Engineers. We are especially excited and honored that Mr. Liu will now be working on the archway's conservation this summer. And as most of you may already know, this is a project a long time coming. We've been just hoping and juggling different things to make it happen, and it looks like this summer it will actually happen and the conservation will take place, and it's a victory for us all. It's our hope that in conserving this friendship archway's beauty and majesty, we may all find occasion to reflect on its artistry and come together to a greater appreciation of the history and the culture that it represents. Thank you very much for the invitation, and happy celebrations.
And thank you so much, Executive Director Heran Sereke-Brhan, for your wonderful speech. And without a doubt, the most striking and enduring symbol of Chinatown is the Great Friendship Archway. As Mayor Bowser has mentioned, the archway remains an enduring and unforgettable symbol of the neighborhood's heritage and the city's rich multicultural fabric. Next up, I would like to introduce everyone to a dear friend of mine and our next speaker, Chair of the Commission on Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs, John Tinpe. Let me tell you a little bit about John. John Tinpe is a business leader and a public servant in Washington, D.C. Ever since moving to the district in 1991, he has served in numerous positions, serving our district and our AAPI community. Aside from being an everlasting leader on the Commission of Asian and Pacific Islander Affairs of the District of Columbia since 2001, he held board member positions as Director of Chinatown Cultural Center, President of Chi-Am Lions Club, board member of AQUA, and board member of Miss DC America pageant. His service to our district also includes being advisory neighborhood commissioner for 6 years, including 4 years as chairman and on the advisory panel for design review for the Martin Luther King Jr. Memorial Library. John, if you please.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Commission on Asia-Pacific Islander Community Development, I would like to congratulate and wish everyone a happy Heritage Month of May. I would also like to thank Mayor Bowser and the Mayor's Office of Asia-Pacific Island Affairs for sponsoring this event. I would like to thank all the healthcare workers and emergency medical service employees for fearlessly working at the front line to save the lives of others. During these trying times, it is important to show unity, to come together and show support for each other and show compassion and love. There may be racial biasness and harassment experienced as a result of frustration during these difficult times. If so, these incidences should be reported immediately to proper authorities. This is important not only to yourself, but to prevent similar incidences from occurring to others. I want to reiterate the message from Mayor Bowser that COVID-19 doesn't care about race, nationality, or ethnicity. Viruses do not discriminate, and neither should we. With that in mind, all non-violent and non-emergency matters should be reported to the Mayor's Office of Asia-Pacific Island Affairs, MOAPIA, by calling 202-727-3120, or the DC Office of Human Rights by complaining of discrimination at ohr.dc.gov or emailing ohr@dc.gov. With that, I would like to wish everyone a happy Heritage Month of May. Thank you.
For your strong message for unity and reiterating Mayor Bowser's message that viruses don't discriminate, and neither should we. As John mentioned, it is important for us to take action when we experience any sort of discrimination or harassment. To stand up for our communities, we must be vigilant and condemn racial hatred, regardless of who is targeted. Now, our next presenter will be speaking to us on the importance of participating in the 2020 census. According to the Census Bureau, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders have been the fastest growing racial groups in the country. However, at the same time, the Census Bureau's research has also shown that Asian Americans are the racial group least familiar with the census and the ones most reluctant to participate. Given these twin dynamics, it is more essential than ever for philanthropy, government, industry, and academia to go all in and ensure a complete and accurate count among AAPI communities. Terry Ao Minnis, who is the co-chair on the Leadership Conference of Civil and Human Rights Census Task Force and Senior Director of the Census and Voting Programs for Asian Americans Advancing Justice, joins us tonight to provide a presentation dealing with the importance of participating in the 2020 census, especially for our AAPI community. Thank you for being here with us tonight, Terry.
Thank you for having me and for inviting me to talk about the 2020 census. As I am, well, thank you, James, for the promptness in getting the PowerPoint up. Again, I am Terry Ao Minnis, and I am Senior Director of Census and Voting Programs at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC. We are a national nonprofit, nonpartisan civil rights and advocacy organization focusing on the Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander communities. And we have several program areas that include census and voting rights, immigration, telecom, and technology and media diversity, hate crimes, affirmative action, and the like. We are one of the Asian Americans Advancing Justice affiliates. The national affiliation includes 4 other affiliates, one in Atlanta, one in Chicago, one in Los Angeles, and one in San Francisco. Together, we've been working together to lead our Count Us in 2020 census campaign focused on the AA and HPI community, and have also had the pleasure of working with many of our partners, including one that you'll hear from in a little bit, Sina from EPIC. And we've been really pleased to be able to work with all the partners to make sure that we're able to discuss the importance of the census for our communities. Next slide, please. So let's jump into it. Why is the census important? Next slide, please. So you have hopefully all been hearing a lot about the 2020 census. I know Ben and his team have been doing a great job in making sure to get the word out. But it's always good for us to take a step back and take a look again about what the census actually is and why it matters. So the census is constitutionally mandated, and it's a count that takes place every 10 years of every person in the country. And it is really meant to count everybody in the United States, regardless of immigration status, right? And being counted in the census is crucial for your family and your community, as data from the census is used to divide, really to allocate over $1.5 trillion in federal funding annually. That is from the federal government to the states for things like schools, hospitals, roads, libraries, community centers, and more. Some of the largest federal programs can be seen in this graphic, such as SNAP and Medicaid. Next slide, please. The census is also a crucial part of our democratic system. Data from the census are used to allocate or apportion the members of the House of Representatives to the states, which translates to political powers for our communities. Once the seats are reallocated to the states, then census data are used to draw the lines for these congressional districts. They're also used to redraw lines for state and local entities as well. Census data are also critical to protecting people from voting discrimination, and is used to calculate which jurisdictions have to provide language assistance to voters under Section 203 of the Voting Rights Act. Next slide, please. So one thing that's really important for us to remember when we're talking about census counts is that It's meant to be 100%. It's meant to be a perfect count, but the reality is, of course, it won't be, because we don't have perfect things in our world, unfortunately. That being said, if everybody in every community were missed at the same rate, then we really wouldn't have a problem, right? Because then allocations of political power or allocations of federal dollars, as previously mentioned, would still flow to the communities in proportional, amounts. Unfortunately, we know that historically and traditionally, there are communities that are especially hard to count. And that means that people within those communities are less likely to respond to the census. So when we have a count that is disproportionate, then we end up with a disproportionate undercount. And this is where the number of people that are recorded for a particular community is actually less than is in that community, but also uh, it is disproportionately hitting certain communities harder than others, right? So communities that are historically hard to count or undercounted include racial and ethnic minorities, renters, people with limited English proficiency, immigrants, and small children, that is children under the age of 5. So I think it's really critical for us to understand that part of our charge is making sure that people who are less likely to participate, whether that's somebody who is more distrustful of the government, perhaps it's just has language barriers that need assistance in participating, that we're reaching these people and making sure that they understand not only the importance of participating, but how they can participate. Next slide, please. So part of the work that we do is focused around census advocacy and policy work. Our census program is a decade-long, permanent, year in, year out effort around census advocacy. And then as we get closer to the actual taking of a census, the 0 year, as we're in now, then we will also add a component of a Get Out to Count campaign, a education and outreach campaign, as we've done over the last 3 decades. So that is 2000, 2010, and 2020. Next slide, please. So we really are, one of the reasons why we work so much around the census and why we have a permanent decade-long program is because it's the only comprehensive source for detailed ANHPI data, right? And so when we talk about working on this all decade long, we are really talking about weighing in, being at the table, and providing input around the testing and research plan that the Bureau developed to figure out how they'll take the next census. It's about planning for the next census. So one of the issues that we worked on was around trying to get increased language access and assistance in the 2020 census, and also appropriations to ensure that the Census Bureau actually gets the funding it needs to take a proper census. One thing that we've seen over the years is that often, there's not an understanding that a census actually takes over a decade to put on. So while there may be money flowing in the 9 and 0 years, it oftentimes in the mid-decade, a lot of other programs will try to raid the census, budget to be able to try to fund the work. But taking away from the census means that at the end of the day, the census product is not as good as it can be. And of course, over this for this census, one of the main issues that we had worked on was around modernizing the race and ethnicity questions, which unfortunately, while there were some nibbles and minor improvements this time around, we were not able to take the complete modernization over the finish line. But hopefully we still have, a lot of good fodder for the 2030 census. Next slide, please. Some of the other advocacy efforts that we've had for the 2020 census include, along with MALDEF, filing a lawsuit against the administration to remove the unnecessary and untimely citizenship question, advocating for expanded language coverage by the Census Bureau for their communication and operations plan, again, advocating for a fully funded census budget, including, work around ensuring supplemental funding for COVID-19 related expenses and delays. We've also been working to advocate for congressional oversight on the Census Bureau's adjusted operational timeline and operational enhancements amidst COVID-19 disruptions, expanding the Census Bureau's call center capacity to shorten wait times for folks, particularly with respect to their language lines, and also working with Congress to address the Census Bureau's request for extended statutory deadline. And I will note that a lot of these advocacy efforts really have been happening over the last several months as this has thrown us all. The pandemic has sort of thrown a lot of different operations into a little bit of chaos. Next slide, please. So to dig in a little bit more about how COVID-19 has impacted the 2020 census. Next slide, please. Just want to flag that, as many of you know, April 1st was Census Day. And if we had been trucking along without COVID-19 coming through, we would actually be in the midst of non-response follow-up with a plan of wrapping up the operations for the count at the end of July. Because of COVID-19, that has all been shifted. The current plan is to have the self-response period extending from July 31st, as I mentioned, to October 31st. That aligns with non-response follow-up, which has been delayed to August 11th, running through October 31st. And then some of these other operations around group quarters, right, such as counting students in college dorms, as well as other institutions, has been moved. Enumeration of transitory locations to help count the homeless population has also been delayed, and other aspects. So all of this has also led to the Census Bureau making a request to Congress to actually shift their statutory deadline. The Census Bureau is statutorily required to deliver the apportionment counts to the president by the end of the 0 year, and deliver redistricting data to the states by the end of March, or before Census Day in 2021, before April 1st. So the effort is in play to switch those dates to a later date to account for the longer taking of a census, and that language to make that, to allocate that shift actually is in the current House HEROES Act. Next slide, please. All right, so the Census Bureau had actually suspended field operations in March due to COVID-19 to protect the safety of its employees and to limit any face-to-face contact. They had a tentative restart to their operations of June 1st, which is right around the corner. But we've actually seen that the Bureau has started to slowly open up some of their area census offices. And as noted, it's a phased start, and it's coming online where it can. So they've started in some areas of the country to start the census operations back, and will continue to do so, providing updates every Friday with respect to new places where they'll be opening up offices. Next slide, please. So what this has meant, though, of course, is not only the Census Bureau needing to shift their operations, but really for community organizations that have all been working to engage community members to participate in the census. So because in-person operations are not viable at this moment, organizations have turned to digital organizing to continue to educate and motivate communities to participate and fill out their forms. So some of the creative ways our partners have been conducting GOTC efforts include, of course, social media campaigns, phone banking, text banking, leaving flyers and literature at grocery stores, ethnic grocery stores, working with local restaurants, and also, holding virtual census rallies, dance parties, and other events. So, this is to say that the census work continues. And why is it continuing? Because the census is still important. The national response rate is now at just over 60% as of May 24th. DC is pretty close, but just trailing a little bit behind the national response rate. And so in order for DC to receive its fair share of resources for our diverse communities, we need to continue to educate and motivate people to fill out the census. It's also important to note that census data are critical for disaster planning and national emergencies as we find ourselves currently in. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to close up with some resources for folks to be able to engage community members and to find any answers that you may have. Next slide, please. I mentioned the campaign that the Advancing Justice Affiliation has put together. And you can find all our resources at www.countusin2020.org. Next slide, please. We have more information available there. We have fact sheets, we have taped webinars, and we have blogs. We have plenty of information. We also have information available in 23 Asian and Pacific Islander languages. So there is plenty of information available for people to be able to get information out to their community members and to get it out in both linguistically and culturally appropriate, manner. The flyers that we have are also available for groups that would like to customize them and add their own logo. We recognize that we may not be the trusted messenger for people in the community, so we want to make sure that we have resources available that will allow for the trusted messenger to also be identified through that. We also released a hotline toolkit with translated graphics, such as the one you see in the slide here, where folks can do targeted social media outreach to get the number and the information out to people. Next slide, please. So we've been celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month this May, along with all of you, with the hashtag AAPI 2020 Coalition, sharing census messages each Tuesday throughout this month to lift up the importance of our communities getting counted. Our theme this May is hashtag rooted in community, hashtag rising together, to recognize the history of generations before us and the solidarity that we must keep building for a stronger future. You can get access to the Census APAM toolkit by signing up at bit.ly/Census APAM toolkit. With this, the toolkit includes information and graphics on the importance of the census for our communities and getting out the count during COVID-19. The toolkit has been updated each week in May, and although APAM is coming to an end, this toolkit has some great messages that are relevant to the census no matter what month it is. So please sign up for this toolkit to continue sharing these messages for the rest of APAM and beyond. Next slide, please. As mentioned, the census continues to be important, especially during the pandemic. Census data are critical for future emergency planning, such as dealing with the pandemic or dealing with natural disasters that we know are on the horizon and unfortunately occurring in different parts of our country. Here are some graphics that can be found in our APAM toolkit on census plus COVID-19 messaging that just sort of shows you how we've been trying to get the word out and highlight the importance of census data. Next slide, please. Finally, we've had monthly community calls as part of the AAPI 2020 campaign. This is where NCAPA members sharing new Census Bureau updates, share different updates that they have and ideas with respect to outreach strategies. And it's a space really for people to ask questions and to, collaboratively brainstorm. We usually have about 80 to 100 people on the call from around the country, many who are doing census outreach outside of their day jobs. And at the end, we always have a breakout session for folks to share ideas with each other and ask questions. So please sign up for these calls as well. Next slide, please. And I'll end just with a contact email for you if you're interested in learning more or have questions. More than happy to engage with anybody that would like to do more work around the 2020 census. We still have plenty of time to engage, and I think that with the delay, it's going to be even more important for us to keep that drumbeat going and making sure that people can still, recognize that they can participate. They can participate today from the safety of their home. They can fill out the census form online. They can call the census hotline number and provide their responses over the phone, or they could still mail in a packet. Doing any one of these things will help ensure that when non-response follow-up starts, when census takers start going door to door, that the chance of a census taker coming by go down significantly the sooner you participate. And with that, I would like to turn it back over. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for your insightful presentation and for the powerful message for all of us to be counted. So that's very important. And if you have to the audience, if you have any questions about the census, please type in your question and we will go over that during the Q&A session. And I do see that there was a question already on the in the chat box. So your voice is vital to the improvement of our community. And if you haven't completed the census, I encourage you to do so online or by phone. And let's make sure our voices are heard by being counted. Our next group of speakers is the highlight of tonight's celebration. Their stories are a testament to this year's theme of building resilience together. And we're excited to have them join us. Tonight, we're joined by Rita Lee of the Chinese Consolidated Benevolent Association of DC, who donated 16,000 medical masks, 200 K95 masks, 200 face shields, and 200 goggles to DC. These PPEs will keep our district residents and frontline workers safe. Eric Bruner Young, a DC restorer whose culinary establishments such as Turkey Underground, Marketo, Honeycomb Grocer, Paper Horse, Noodle Bar, Brothers and Sisters, and Spoken English brought joy to our palates, started the nonprofit initiative, The Power of Heran, which re-employ laid-off independent restaurant workers, kept eateries open, and provides meals to neighborhood workers on the front line of the pandemic.
Sunny Kakar, the founder and executive director, whose Seva Truck operation has been providing much needed meals to communities most affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. And Sina Weepy, commissioner of CAPIA's Pacific Island Task Force, whose work as policy associate at Empowering Pacific Islander Communities, or EPIC, is giving a voice to our native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. Thank you for joining us tonight.
And if I may, I would like to go around and ask questions highlighting how your contributions are helping our city. So first question is to Rita Lee, CCBA. The CCBA has a long tradition working with Mayor Bowser and our office in supporting Chinatown and the district's AAPI community. We also know that CCBA has been doing a lot of great work to help the district community during this time. Can you tell us more about what CCBA has done? Rita? I don't think we can hear Rita. Maybe she's muted. Rita, if you can unmute yourself, please. We can hear you now.
Now?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Sure, Elena. Thank you. The CCBA is a 100-year-old organization in DC whose main focus providing the health and community services for the member of the DC community. During this time, we donated 16,000 medical masks, 200 N95 masks, and 200 face shields, and 200 pair of goggles to DC, which will keep our distant residents and the frontline workers safe. In addition, we donate 1,000 masks, clean products, and hand sanitizer to the residents of Walla House. The Walla House has 153 apartments for the low-income senator in the heart of Chinatown. Overall, we monitor the condition of their living environment and provide professional medical advice. One of our biggest projects we are working on during this time is the long-awaited opening of the Walla Adult Daycare Center, where we will provide the senior service as such, providing the senior with nutritious meal, monitoring their medical condition and physical ability daily, and taking them to the medical appointment and doctor, physical therapy, and hospital, labs, and outpatient surgery appointments, and picking up the medicine for them and making sure they are taking them safely and prescribed, providing them with a social worker to help them fulfill their social and medical needs, and overall educating them to help them to survive and thrive during this unexpected pandemic.
Sure. Thank you so much, Rita. And I do have a second question for you. We always consider CCBA as one of our on-the-ground community partners. And when we need advice or to get a pulse on the community, we reach out to CCBA. So as the district head into the recovery and reopening phase, how do you think our city and residents will do post-COVID-19?
Washingtonians are smart and resilient people, where we are anxious to open economy and to prepare ourselves for the possible second wave of the pandemic. I think city residents will do their best to continue to practice social distancing, follow the health and safety guidelines from the mayor's office and government officials. As best we can, we want to do our best to support local business, so they may once again thrive in DC. CCBA is open to work with DC government to have joint venture with other community partners to plan ways effectively to help local business, such as different cultural events, food festival, and any other activity to promote the local merchant and restaurants.
Sure.
So, yeah, of course, with the transition, we look forward to another very successful Chinatown Lunar New Year Parade in the coming years of the celebrate 2021 Year of the Ox.
Well, thank you so much, Rita, for your comments, and most importantly, for your commitment and service to the city and being a trailblazer for many of us so that we can follow. My next questions are addressed to Eric Bruner-Young, restaurateur and founder of the Power of 10. Eric, I have 3 questions for you, so maybe I'll start with the first one. We know that there are no dining in at any of your restaurants currently, but can you give us a sense of how business is, and if you know how business is at other restaurants in the district?
Hey guys, how's it going today? Happy AAPI month. It's a huge honor to be in this forum, and I really appreciate the platform. Up until the shutdown on March 15th, I had 4 restaurants, Makedo, ABC Pony, Spoken English, and Brothers and Sisters. 2 of my restaurants are currently closed indefinitely. ABC Pony and Makedo are still currently open doing delivery and carry out. I mean, it's obviously been very tough, but it's just one of those situations in life where it's really not in your hands and you just have to count your blessings. And, you know, we're just going to continue to do what we do, is just try to serve people and make people happy through food in the safest way possible, which is what we've always done, and take care of our community in this time. And I think it's been really amazing to see Washington, D.C. Collectively work as a unit to navigate this time. I'm really proud of the work that's been happening in the district compared to what I've seen happening in the rest of the United States. And, you know, and so, yeah.
Sure. Well, thank you so much, Eric. And like you said, we are all very grateful for being alive and for being safe and for being healthy. And so our thoughts and prayers are with those who are going through these very hard pandemic times. Let's talk about the Power of 10, which was originally meant to help workers in the restaurant and service industry. How did you come up with the idea, and does the name mean something?
Yeah, so, you know, true to our Asian blood and some of our stereotypes, we're known for our math skills. You know, really it was just, first it was just kind of doing calculations for what our businesses, my businesses needed to do on a weekly basis to try to keep intact as many jobs as possible. I've been an entrepreneur here in Washington, D.C. for over a decade now, and I was driving home through the H Street corridor where I live and my businesses are, and it was just a quiet day, and it really, you know, bummed me out. I'm a big believer in trickle-up economics, and that's what we kind of did with the Power of 10, which was $10,000 a week in donations could create 10 full-time jobs and service 1,000 free meals in any community in America. And so we decided to focus our efforts first in the H Street corridor. We sponsored an amazing restaurant, Caribbean restaurant called Cane. And they've been doing this for 10 weeks now and have served over 10,000 meals to Washington Hospital Center. And now we're 30 restaurants nationwide, with 15 of those restaurants here in the District of Columbia.
Sure. Well, thank you. It's a real sense or has a very strong meaning. Now, your initiative, that's the last question. Your initiative has also evolved into serving hospital workers, first responders, and others in need. Did you imagine it getting so big so quickly? And do you anticipate that there will still be a need as our city recovers? Will the power of 10 still be around?
Yeah, I think our initiative really starts with the small business owner, right? So with the money that they're getting, they're able to retain employees. And with those same employees, those employees can keep their lives relatively normal. Then the restaurants are able to produce and serve food, pay their vendors. And then instead of serving a traditional customer, which isn't coming in the door anymore, we really like to say the customer is the community in need. And we really helped a lot of small independent operators who don't have the resources or platform like myself. Asian-owned businesses. Can you imagine, an elderly Chinese business owner trying to navigate PPP or EIDL, especially right when it hit before any of these language translations were available, and then trying to make these business decisions about loans, which is traditionally not in our culture, to pull these types of loans. And so we've helped a lot of businesses that don't have resources or platforms like myself through the power of 10, by first committing to them and then helping them find organizations that are kind of falling in between the gaps. We're serving Wallach House and Museum Square that don't have a lot of representation in the city, and that we've specifically partnered them with a Chinese restaurant who was very confused about PPP and EIDL. And so really our organization, even though it is about feeding communities in need, it's really about connecting the full economic cycle, and supporting them in each and every part of this endeavor to navigate through this time. In terms of food pandemic, a lot of these issues existed before the pandemic and are going to continue to exist after. And we want to make sure that the Power of 10 initiative becomes a social safety net and a financial safety net for small, minority-owned, women-owned, immigrant-owned businesses moving forward. Because just like Rita mentioned earlier, no matter how cautious we are or how many phases we approach to this, the reality is that a second wave could be possible, or even if it's not virus related, climate change related. I think moving forward, all economies and all states and federal governments just need to be much more prepared for worst case scenarios. As Americans, we generally don't think that this would impact us. And now we know that's not the case.
Thank you.
To Sunny Kakar, the founder and executive director of Save a Truck. Save a Truck started as an organization that sends meals to local communities in need, but as the pandemic disproportionately affects low-income communities, we know that many more people need help. How has Save a Truck adapted to this current situation?
Hi, good evening. Thanks for having me on today. I'm Sam, our executive director of Save a Truck. We started Save a Truck with solely focused on serving communities in need. Started about 4.5 years ago, and the way our operating model has traditionally been serving at-risk schools, Title I schools in DC, Maryland, and Virginia, as well as veterans. Pandemic started, we've had to change our model. We would typically drive to the location because we're a mobile service and we can cook hot meals there. Now we typically cook at our location, and then we pack up hot meals. And so we've had to deliver them to schools. And so the schools have come up with a safe way to distribute that food throughout the communities. Now, in addition to some of the students that were, before getting both breakfast and lunch, which is part of the Title I designation, they were getting reduced and free meals in school. Now they're not really getting those meals. Some of those programs, the national food programs across the country, haven't fully been implemented the way that we had hoped by now. And so we are really trying to get not only food to those kids, but also to their families. And so that's how we've kind of adopted over the last couple of months. And we've also actually increased our capacity several fold in order to meet the tremendous need that is out there right now.
Thank you. And what are the biggest challenges to your operation, and how are you overcoming them day by day?
Yeah, so I think our biggest challenge is just the overwhelming need right now. Listen, there's always been a need. You know, we tend to go to our designation. It's basically from point A to point B, and we've never really. I've failed to look left and right to find out what's happening in our communities. And as I've discovered more and more that even in the most wealthiest counties in the country, Fairfax County, Montgomery County, Arlington County, et cetera, there are thousands and thousands of children that do not know where their next meal is coming from. And in DC, 1 out of 7 children facing food insecurity on a regular basis. So these are very, very challenging times. They always have been. This pandemic has exacerbated that need. And so we are trying to scale the organization to be able to continue to meet that demand. And in more than just providing hot food, which I think is extremely important, we're doing it in any way we can where there's a need in that community that we believe we can satisfy, either through our network, through whatever resources that are available, through partnership, and so on and so forth. So, you know, like I mentioned earlier, there was a challenge with how we were delivering, because we want to engage with the people that we're serving, and you know, learn from them as well as, you know, break bread with them. Now we're not able to do that as much. The other thing is, because of the social distancing, we can only really have families that live together in the truck cooking, and so that limits the number of volunteers that we can have. And so on and so forth. So the level of effort by a few families that really support the day-to-day cooking is a challenge that we're dealing with. But listen, we're blessed, and so we're going to overcome those challenges.
And finally, what are your plans to continue helping the community as the district reopens?
So, you know, our mission started 4.5 years ago. And that need has always been there. And we are focused very heavily on Ward 7 and Ward 8, some veteran shelters, some DC schools, et cetera. And so while that's been exacerbated during the COVID of this pandemic, you know, when this thing finally does go away, and it hopefully becomes a distant memory, but certainly a vivid memory, our mission. And so we will continue to scale and expand. We're partnered up with great DC organizations, Martha's Table, Capital Area Food Bank, et cetera, where we continue to serve the most vulnerable communities across DC, as well as those most impacted by the impacts of the pandemic.
Thank you very much. Tessina Weepy, Commissioner on CAPIA's Pacific Island Task Force and Policy Associate at Empowering Pacific Islander Communities. When it comes to bringing greater awareness to Pacific Islander needs, the NHPI community is not always prioritized in the AAPI umbrella. How is this oversight being corrected here in the district?
Thank you, Dana. Can you hear me? Okay, just checking. All right. So I've been working with Bruce Leo, who's also a commissioner, to really try and center our community's experiences through the Pacific Islander Task Force. And we've been able to get support from embassies, local cultural organizations, faith-based organizations, and folks who work on the Hill. We don't have a lot of our community here, you know, compared to places like California, but we're still here, and it's important that we build community with each other. I think the goal is to identify issues that matter to us most and engage with the local DC government. We organized a census webinar that was supposed to be in person, but it literally happened in the midst of everyone going into lockdown and having to work from home. So we had to adjust just like everyone else. And we had some of the MOAPIA staff join us and learn more about just, the community that's here in DC, but also who just work in DC and may live in Virginia or Maryland. And so we're hoping to continue that work and expand beyond census through the task force as we start to reopen in the district. Like Terry had mentioned earlier, EPIC has also worked with them to make sure we have in-language materials for the Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander community. And I think what's great about that is that it's not just for our national partners, but it's also for our local partners as well. So we've been able to share that just with, our community here in the district. And I feel like it's been very useful. Many of our partners and community members have found, the information that we've created, especially the ones in language, very helpful to help them understand, things like the census, why it's important, and why it matters, especially for our community, because it is the one piece of, it's the one thing that really defines our community as far as data and how we can use that at the local level and also at the national level as well. Also, I just want to point out too that I think it's very common for a lot of Pacific Islanders to work in cities but live, in outside in places like Maryland and Virginia. I feel like that doesn't just happen here. That's very common in very many states. So it's been really great just to build a community with those who do live in the district and work in the district, but may not live here. But it's been just I think for me, it's been a sense of home because I'm originally from California, and so I've been able to build community with Pacific Islanders here. I also think it's really important to have allies for those who are not Pacific Islander, but want to learn more and make sure that we have a voice and a seat at the table. Organizations like the National Council of Asian Pacific Americans, also known as NCAPA, along with AAJC, that EPIC has been working closely with to ensure that we have a Pacific Islander perspective through various social media campaigns and policy issues. And I think when Pacific Islanders from other states that we partner with see that we have that perspective included, then they feel seen and they feel heard. So that's the same approach that we're taking with the task force as well.
Thank you. Finally, Pacific Islanders have released data across the country that indicates that in states with the largest PI populations, the community's rates of infection and mortality are higher than in other racial or ethnic groups. What do we know about this disparity and how is it being addressed here in the district?
So today, actually, there was a hearing for the House Ways and Means Committee on the disproportionate impact on communities of color, including Pacific Islanders. And Dr. Ray Samoa, who is the lead for our National Pacific Islander COVID-19 response team, gave a testimony on how COVID has been impacting our community. Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islanders have the highest rate of confirmed COVID cases in California, King County in Washington State, Clark County in Nevada, and the second highest in Utah, Oregon, Arkansas, and Colorado. In Los Angeles County, the death rate for Pacific Islanders is 12 times higher than it is for whites, 9 times higher for Asians, and 7 times higher for Latinos, and 5 times higher than for African Americans. According to DC Health, there are 20 native Hawaiian and or Pacific Islander positive cases. We don't know the data for deaths because it just shows up as other, which there are 4. And there's a possibility that we could be grouped with Asians, so we really need that data disaggregation. Some members of the task force, like Auntie Kehau Butts, Adam Carbolito, Isabella Coggins, Stu Glass, including myself and Bruce, we represent the DC, Maryland, Virginia region as part of the larger national team. And we're working on strategies of how to get data, educate our community, and identify advocacy efforts that would work best for our community here. We're in a unique position because we're in the nation's capital, and we can do, I feel like we can figure out whether we want to do, or we can do both, local and or federal advocacy.
Well, thank you so much, Sina, for being the powerful voice representing the community. And thank you to all of our presenters for sharing your stories with us tonight. Though we could only hear from 4 people, I would like to say that there were countless more individuals and organizations that we wanted to feature tonight, but couldn't do so due to time constraints. And we hope to feature even more examples of our AAPI community's resilience, service, and inspirations in future events. Thank you once again for joining us tonight, ladies and gentlemen. We wish you the best in your endeavors. And tonight, before we're moving to the most exciting part of the event as well, which is tonight was an opportunity to see how much our APIs have enhanced our city in so many ways. And as business owners, artists, educators, elected officials, servicemen and women, you have truly contributed to our city and impacted our culture. And lastly, we will open the panel for Q&A session to the audience. We encourage you to post questions to our speakers. In addition, we are joined by 2 special panelists who can help us answer specific questions. And these are Thomas Arturo Talamante, Deputy Chief of Staff of Mayor Bowser, who joins us to answer specific questions on the mayor's and DC's response and services during current public health emergency, and Melissa Bird, Executive Director of District Census 2020. She joins us tonight to answer any questions regarding the 2020 census. If you have any questions, please look towards the bottom of your screen and you will see several icons in the bottom section. Click on the circular Q&A icon to type in your questions and then click send. So shall we proceed to the Q&A session? Dana, over to you.
Yeah. I actually have several questions which have appeared already. The first question is for Melissa Bird. Does the Census Bureau have a way to check immigrants' response rates during the self-response phase? If so, how would you assess DC's immigrant groups' participation rates?
That's a great question. So what we get real-time response data from the census every day, and that's updated online around 3 o'clock every day. It's only broken down by census tract though. So what we can do though is we have ideas based on where certain populations already live in the district. And so we can sort of correlate that to census tracts that have a low response rate or a high response rate. But at this point, we're not getting that specific data about immigrant households responding by household right now, just at the tract level.
Thank you. This question is for Tomas. My parents are immigrants. Can they get tested for free?
Thank you so much. And before I answer that question, I just want to thank you all for a very amazing first virtual AAPI Heritage Month, and want to commend Director Guzman and our MOAPIA staff who do phenomenal work in the district, and all of our commission members and everyone that's joined this evening. The answer is yes. You can get tested for free in the District of Columbia. We have several sites available at coronavirus.dc.gov where you can find under the testing tab on the main page where we have several locations for testing available for free. We're also starting a new location in the Chinatown area that will open up on Monday off of F Street, and the exact cross streets are I believe between 4th and 5th off of F Street. Yes, that's correct, right? I got it wrong. But we also have another location that'll be opening east of the river. But all of those, we have several locations available that are for free. And we hope that people will go and find the location nearest you to get free testing. We also have information about symptoms and multiple languages. And so we hope that you will help us share that information and that we do not want any sort of for getting tested, immigration status nor financial status should prohibit anyone from going to seeking medical care or from getting tested. So we hope you will, again, go to coronavirus.dc.gov to find you the nearest free testing location near you.
Thank you. This question is for Ben. What are you doing about anti-Asian hate? How is MOAPIA involved in tracking anti-Asian harassment?
So thank you for that question. There are a number of things I think we've been doing. As I mentioned before briefly, our office is documenting all of the incidents that we're hearing, whether it's things that we hear from the Metropolitan Police Department. They contact us whenever there's a violent incident, regardless of its motivation, but there's a heightened sensitivity now if there's a sense that it's related to coronavirus. So we are documenting incidents as we hear about them. Fortunately, I think the incidence has been higher in some areas than it has been in DC. We've been in touch with some of the national folks, that have been tracking these incidents, and I think we have been spared some of the more serious incidents, but certainly we condemn violence in any form. I would also say that we've actually been on the leading edge of some of this response. Like we were one of the, because we did things like our Lunar New Year parade was the day after Lunar New Year, and after which, you began to see some of the effects of coronavirus happen in other cities as they began to shut down their Lunar New Year parades. But beyond that, some of the earliest messages that the mayor provided, when we first began to talk about the coronavirus and we first began to issue information about the health and hygiene steps that the public health experts wanted us to take, part and parcel of that initial round of messaging was the messaging about anti-stigma. So we talked about washing your hands, and we talked about how viruses don't discriminate, and neither should we. It was part of the earliest part of our messaging. The mayor went to Chinatown early on to make sure that we knew that we were still supporting our businesses in Chinatown. I went with some of my colleagues to Chinatown as well to talk to some of the business owners there. And so we've been, really doing this since the beginning. The mayor has been tweeting now and then about it. An official statement came out of her office last week that we also posted on social media. So, we've been in contact with the community that have wanted us to make more proactive statements. And so I think tonight you also heard from the mayor. And so we're proud of the response, and we're committed to making sure that we take every opportunity to condemn violence against anyone in our community.
Thank you. This question is for Melissa Bird. Is there any AAPI partners outreach that stood out to you? Any outreach activities or plans that were unique and effective?
So I feel like MOAPIA has done an incredible job with outreach, and then we also have our grant program, and we have grantees working specifically within the AAPI community. I think since we've pivoted on how we're doing this, I think a lot of the virtual online events have been very helpful. I know there's also been phone banking to try to keep that kind of personal, trusted messenger touch. I also know that MOAPIA has done a lot of work directly in schools to reach families. Schools are always a place of trust, especially in immigrant communities. And so I feel like they did a lot of work early on with the schools to reach families talking about the census, which I thought was very effective.
Thank you. And this question is for Tomas. What sort of programs is DC putting out to protect and include senior citizens in the district's recovery efforts?
Thank you so much for that question. And that's a very important question because as we've learned through the pandemic that our senior population ends up being has ended up being one of our highest risk populations when it comes to not only being positive for COVID, but then unfortunately passing from COVID complications. And so in partnership, not only with MOAPIA, but with all of our MOCA offices, and I believe Jasmine and Lamont likely are on the line as well, but in partnership with our MOCA, Mayor's Office of Community Affairs, and the DC Department of Aging and Community Living, we've done a constant advocacy related to symptoms, testing, and resources within targeted at senior populations. And that's not only through mailers, robo-dials. We've done several mailers about symptoms and testing. We've done robo-dials into communities, and then also working with our community affairs offices to make sure that we're disseminating flyers and posters in several languages to get the word out about what to be cognizant of when it comes to symptoms, and then those testing resources. But then also making sure that that we have that we are getting other resources still out to the community that are integral to our senior population. So, we worked with DACL to move our senior feeding sites to delivery to make sure that those seniors in the district that depend on food through our feeding sites are still being able to get food and resources. We also, if you are become positive and are able to leave your home, we through our response team can get you different items that you need delivered directly to your home, so that you can stay home. And so that's cleaning materials to other essential items, not just food, that we can get to deliver to senior stores, but also just to anyone that's positive that may need that assistance. And then also wanted to relay, in a lot of our communities where we have high congregant living, I know the concern has been, if you're in multiple family members in one unit, or a single apartment unit, or multiple, maybe 2 apartment units with several family members, the fear of, I'm positive and I do not want to get another family member positive or contaminate our family. We have isolation resources available to where we can move somebody that's positive to a safe isolation site so that they do not spread the virus to their family members, which we've been, disseminating information out through MOAPIA as well. So those are just some of the resources that are available. And I do want to point out other resources so coronavirus.dc.gov is such an important site. But I did want to share the testing hotline, and I put it in the chat. I may have answered a different question with that because I'm still figuring out WebEx. I think we're all trying to figure out virtual meetings, but our testing hotline for those that may not have computer access, it's 1-855-363-0333, and we do have language access coordinators at DC Health that will help getting people connected. But again, I just want to repeat that number, 1-855-363-0333. But again, we all of our most up-to-date resources are going to be on coronavirus.dc.gov. And I want to point out in particular, as we are still in the midst of the pandemic, we are seeing the data to where we can begin a phased reopening, where the mayor today announced that we will be lifting the stay-at-home order, and she discussed that a little bit in her remarks at the top of the event. At coronavirus.dc.gov/phase1, we have information for business owners and for residents about how to safely phase and reopen, especially I want to make that make that resource page, put that on your radar, because I know we have a lot of amazing small business owners within our AAPI community, many of you on this call. We have resources for you on how to safely reopen restaurants, to retailers, to salons and barbershops. So again, that's at coronavirus.dc.gov/phase1, and want to make sure that you're aware of those resources as well. So yeah.
One last question for Ben. Will there be more events to celebrate AAPI Heritage Month? And will there be more movie nights in the Chinatown Park this summer?
That's a good question. Well, I mean, we have the end of May is drawing close to us. So our office is not kind of officially leading any more events. This is kind of our crown. We are partnering with DC Public Library on Friday, actually, to do a screening of the movie The Farewell with Awkwafina. So, you can go to DCPL and find out more information. They use their streaming tool Canopy to screen it. So, you know, so we'll have a good discussion about that. I thoroughly enjoyed the movie and I'm looking forward to seeing it again. But, you know, there's other things that are happening in the community that we're, you know, going to be checking out as well as our office kind of plays a more observant role for Heritage Month. But as we head into June, as I said, we're doing Immigrant Heritage Month. And so we'll be working with our colleagues in the Mayor's Office of Community Affairs to do more programming. But as to Chinatown, you know, it's very difficult to say anything about the future. Right now, we're looking at doing at least one film, hopefully at the end of the summer. Obviously, a lot of this is subject to change. As you know, Tomas here is looking at me. But we're trying to figure out, you know, as we get closer into the summer, you know, and as things change and evolve, we'll sort of see where we're at. I would love to see a movie on the screen, and we'll just have to see kind of where the circumstances take us. I think that's it for the questions. Yeah, so we're a little bit over time. So, but as we close out then, and it's my honor to be able to close us out, I did want to take I wanted to take the opportunity to thank a couple of folks. I wanted to thank our MCs tonight. So Dana and Elena, thank you for stepping up for this important role for us. I wanted to thank all of our presenters, obviously my boss, Mayor Bowser, but also Terry, whom I happen to know for more years than she might care to admit, as well as my colleagues, Melissa and Tomas. They're playing such unique roles in the city government at this time, in this pandemic moment. So Melissa and Tomas, thank you for joining us tonight. I also wanted to thank our 4 storytellers for sharing with us tonight and sharing with the community as well. And I finally wanted to thank my staff for pulling everyone and all of you together and for handling the logistics and rolling with the punches, but doing so with their usual high standards of professionalism and excellence. But I wanted to close by thanking everyone here tonight for coming and joining us for API Heritage Month. There's obviously so much uncertainty in everything that we're doing these days. And as we've been thinking about this event, something that we've done time and again over the years, you know, we weren't quite sure how this year's edition would turn out. We do hope that you've all had a great time tonight. We will put the video's on YouTube, so we know we didn't get to show it to you tonight, but you can check it out on YouTube and we'll make sure you get the link as we do some follow-up with you. We will email everyone who has been with us tonight. We'll share some information, some of the information that Tomas shared, our link to all things coronavirus in the district, again, coronavirus.dc.gov. We will also probably share with you a survey where you'll be able to share with us your feedback, which we take very seriously. But again, we hope that you've all had a great time tonight. We certainly enjoyed presenting tonight's event with you. So on behalf of Team MOAPIA and all of our presenters, good night, be safe, be healthy, and happy API Heritage Month. Good evening, everyone. Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Normally this part is muted as people cycle off, right?